The Trump administration has approved a takeover of Paramount and CBS by the entertainment studio Skydance. This after the network fired Stephen Colbert and announced the coming demise of The Late Show. Joining us now, Brendan Carr, the chairman of the Federal Communications Commission. And your FCC very quickly approved this. This all went down in July. And it is giving ammunition to those who believe the skids were greased, that the settlement, the $16 million settlement by Paramount of President Trump's lawsuit, was part of an orchestrated arrangement. How do you respond?
Well, there's a lot of misinformation out there. The reality is our review here followed our very standard practice at the FCC. In fact, the timing was right in the wheelhouse of when we ordinarily approve these types of transactions, or at least reach a final decision, both at this administration and the last administration as well. So we ran normal course. We had a full commission vote. And I'm really excited about the outcome. I mean, one of the things that the new buyers of CBS have committed to is unbiased, fact-based reporting. They're going to report on a wide variety of political and ideological perspectives. They're committing to getting rid of invidious forms of DEI discrimination, reinvest in local journalism. So I think it's a great win for the American people.
What do you make of the fact that not just the rivals like Jimmy Kimmel and Jimmy Fallon, but all kinds of celebrities are closing ranks and supporting Stephen Colbert?
Seismic changes taking place right now across the legacy media landscape. There's a lot of reasons for that, but fundamentally, I think it goes back to President Trump. One of the things that President Trump did was he ran directly at the legacy national media, and he smashed the facade that they get to decide what we think and what we get to say. And you're seeing, I think, across the perspectives there, a reaction to that. Up to now, they were gatekeepers, and no one had the courage to call them out on it, number one. And number two, we didn't have access to the wide variety of information, the internet, streaming services, social media, to realize that we don't have to take what the media is saying. There's a real credibility crisis right now for legacy media, whether it's from COVID origin stories, whether it's shutting down Hunter Biden laptop, whether it's Russiagate, the list goes on and on and on. Trust in mainstream media is falling. And so I think a lot of these people who've made business models off of their gatekeeper status are worried, and so they're looking to blame Trump. And again, to some extent, President Trump is the reason why their business models are failing, but not for exactly the reasons that they think.
Well, there's no question that Stephen Colbert is an unabashed liberal who is constantly attacking and mocking Donald Trump. And he rode that into 9 years as number one, but of course also alienating half his audience. But there are partisan conservatives on the air as well. Why not let the marketplace decide?
Well, a couple things. I think the market is speaking. You saw the reports being that CBS was losing something like $50 million a year on Stephen Colbert. And it's great to have, comedians out there. It's great to have satire. It's great to go after people that are in power. But one of the stories here is that, Colbert and others went from being court jesters, making fun of everybody, to being court clerics. And they stopped going for joke lines and laugh lines, and they started going for applause lines. I mean, just look at who's been on there recently. Former Vice President Harris, Adam Schiff, the list goes on. And I think what's happening is that business model simply isn't working anymore. And again, I think it's a consequence that comes from Trump, because he said that these, elites in Hollywood and New York, they don't get to decide anymore what works in this country from a media perspective. And he was speaking for the American people who, again, simply do not trust the legacy national media. So I think the consequences are going to continue to be felt for a period of time here.
You say you want fair coverage, but you are, of course, an appointee by a Republican president who is doing battle almost daily with the media. You point that out. There's no question about it. And there's no question there's been a lot of unfair coverage. But when you say you want fair coverage, does that mean coverage that's more favorable to this president?
Look, something has to change. And again, that's not just my perspective. You can look at everyone from Jeff Bezos, who took over the Washington Post and said that they needed to reorient how they were running that operation. Look at Uri Berliner, a former editor at NPR, who said that that institution brought this upon itself from a lack of ideological diversity. What the FCC is charged with is making sure that broadcast media, not cable, so cable's different. We don't license cable shows, whether it's CNN or Fox News. But if you're going to run a broadcast media operation, the FCC and Congress, frankly, has decided that you need to operate in the public interest. And so I think that's one of the things that we're pushing for, is how do we re-empower these broadcasters who actually serve the interests of their local communities? Because again, as you know, so much of this now is driven by the national programmers, whether it's ABC, CBS, or NBC. So one of the things we're trying to do with the FCC is how do we empower local, constrain the power of those national programmers so that these broadcasters can actually serve their local communities.
The only Democratic member of the FCC, as you know, Ana Gomez, filed a dissent, and she said that this was a case of never-before-seen controls over newsroom decisions and editorial content that she says violate the First Amendment. Want to respond to that?
There's plenty of precedent for what we did. In fact, the bias, the ombudsman that CBS has agreed to put in place that can help address bias issues. That's something that a Democrat FCC put in place previously for Comcast, was a ombudsman. Similarly, with respect to DEI, ending invidious forms of DEI, the past FCC, the Biden FCC, actually required companies as conditions of mergers to expand DEI. So there's plenty of precedent there. And again, we're just trying to make sure that folks fulfill their public interest obligations.
Do you believe the television media will have to become more fair, certainly more fair to President Trump and the Republicans, and just more fair in general to survive, or is everything now moving toward podcasts and YouTube?
Yeah, it's certainly very, very challenged. And again, I do think that something has to change. The idea of just running a partisan carnival doesn't seem to be a good business model anymore. Again, once you go back to President Trump deciding that, he's probably the first politician that said these legacy media operations aren't going to dictate the narrative to me. I'm going to speak the truth. And that has fundamentally undermined the business model, because once you're no longer the gatekeeper, you're this oracle that everybody has to trust. There's a lot more choice out there from streaming platforms and otherwise. So yeah, I do think these business models are going to have to course correct. And I think there's a yearning right now across the country for unbiased, fact-based journalism, and we expect the broadcasters to move in that direction.
Yeah, well, whether late night can survive this transition is really an open question. And the amount of losses by the Late Show certainly underscores that. Mr. Chairman, I appreciate your taking the time. You seem to enjoy the combat at the FCC, and we appreciate you coming on.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.